Hello, Byron, Katie.
Hello, Lilou.
Thank you for accepting to do this interview over Skype.
It's my privilege.
I'm really excited to interview you. You are famous around the world for the work, and I'm really happy to discuss this and discuss all the wonderful things that you're about to do. You're going in Europe. You're coming to Europe this summer in July, all months of July through Amsterdam and London and Paris and all that. So we're really excited to have you. So as most people know, you're the author of many books, 6 books, I think, is that right?
Oh gosh, I'm not sure.
Many books, including Loving What Is. You're the creator and the founder of The Work. I wanted to start this interview really by talking of these times. Right now, a lot of things are happening on this planet. People, a lot of I receive a lot of negative. People really going through a hard time, and depression is happening, loss of control, anxieties, even suicides. What is going on? What is your perception of this? Because you had to go through it yourself many
Well,
years ago.
people are they're projecting the past and the future in their heads. For example, if you imagine what the future is going to be, fear happens. That's how it's created. And I love that the future is not now. And now is the only time we can really live in, if at all, like right here, right now. And this is good. This is really good. And people imagine themselves into the future. It can be terrifying, especially as we watch television and listen to the news, and we experience things like global warming, and we see destruction and the loss of our forests, etc. And we miss the grace of this moment now in the forest, for example, and the trees and the sky and the beautiful experience of right here, right now. It's a gift. It's a gift. So anytime, I like to say, if you want a little fear and terror, get a future.
Yeah.
And if you
How
want,
can we?
a little, if you want a little depression, get a past.
Yeah. So how can we be back in this present moment? I hear that you're all about being in this inquiry, continue to question those stressful thoughts instead of identifying with
Yes,
them. Is that
those.
right?
Well, those thoughts are about the past and future. So I invite people to identify what they're thinking and believing in those moments of depression and fear, and to put them on paper. And on thework.com, there's a Judge Your Neighbor Worksheet, and people can download it at no charge. And they don't have to fill in an application or anything. They can just go there and print it out and just follow the simple directions 1 through 6 on that Judge Your Neighbor worksheet, and then question those thoughts they've identified that are the cause of the depression and the fear, and to set themselves free in that. And the work has the major reputation of working. It really does work because the power of the work is simply the answers within the individual doing the work. That's the power, and that is where we find our freedom as we tap into that knowledge inside of us. And of course, that's why inquiry is so powerful.
A lot of people say whatever you experience in life is actually something that you have inside. So is it coming from this understanding? Because I hear that you receive kind of the work and all this information at 43 years old, kind of very suddenly, and we've all heard a lot of that particular moment, but it's
Yes.
quite special to switch that suffering the same way that Eckhart Tolle maybe has also received some kind of enlightening moment, but not all of us, unfortunately.
Yes, I think that that the valuable thing about that moment for me is I saw that when I believed my thoughts, I suffered, and when I didn't believe them, I didn't suffer. So we can't. I've come to see that this is true for every human being as well. So the gift I have to offer is inquiry, and I don't expect people to use it, but it's my job to offer it, and it's really a powerful experience for people who sit in their own minds as they're questioning what they're believing in those moments of, as we're saying, fear and depression. So in that moment, it was also clear to me. And then I tried to tell people about what I experienced in that moment. And there's no way that can be told or described. It's really beyond description. How can you describe nothing? Every time you try to describe nothing, and by nothing, I mean with the greatest respect, that indescribable. And but what I could do is offer those questions that can take people into that experience. And that's what seems to be going on for millions of people across the planet now. We're passing it on from one to the other, generations away from me, people sharing the work. And it's a beautiful way to peace. And it doesn't need a teacher. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm very interested to know, how did you, this radical change that you lived back then, how did you work it out with your family? I heard it was a little bit turbulent, and a lot of us going through transformational times, like we have to face the friends and the family's reaction and the boss and this and that. So how did you dealt with that, and how did you slowly but surely, brought it to millions?
I was very agoraphobic, which means the fear of leaving my home, leaving my house, and for me, it was a lot just to leave my bedroom, and in that kind of terror, fear of the marketplace is what they call it, and in that state of mind, it's really difficult to clear one's head. But in that moment, as I lay sleeping on the floor, and I woke up to, I woke up in that place, my eyes opened, and in place of all that darkness was this amazing world that I had no view into prior to that moment. And the way my family reacted to the shift was, it was not easy for them. They saw, like my children, they saw their mother's body, but it was not I. And it's like, who is this woman walking out of the bedroom? Who is this woman that is smiling? Who is this woman that is so high functioning? Who is this woman that when I say something or I spill the milk, she is not angry? In fact, she smiles and says it's okay. And it's like, for example, if one of my children spilled milk at dinner, it would be like they are upset and looking at my reaction, waiting for me to be angry, and it doesn't happen. And that's very confusing for them. It's like, what is living in that body we call our mother? And this was a constant state. And I watch them occasionally, still waiting for a kind of reaction that doesn't come, but now they understand that something terrible is not going to turn in me onto them. And so that's a lot of fear that they lost. And they have, over these years, began to really trust this peace, projecting that old mother onto this body has been a journey for them and other people in my life that I have known. But how do I deal with it? At first I invited them to whatever you want to say, it's okay. And they would say, "Are you sure?" And I would say, "Yes." So they began to introduce me to my old self, and that's how I've been able to keep one foot in what I call the dream world, and yet not be the dream, not even the dreamer. So they would say, "Mom, when I was 5 years old, you told me that I did it wrong, and I was so ashamed and angry and hurt," for example. They might say something like that. And so that's how I was introduced to my old self. So I could listen from both places, as that apparition in their mind, in other words, as that mother. And I found that I have 3 children, and none of them had the same mother. So I found all these definitions of their mother, and they were all raised by the same mother. But as perception would have it, it's just like the ego. If we all look to ourselves, it's like the ego is, it identifies, from moment to moment to moment. It's never the same identity. And it's, that's the ego's challenge to identify as something. And of course, mind is not a physical thing. Mind is, if you put all your thoughts, collected them and put them in a basket, and you looked in the basket, it would be absolutely empty. So you can imagine the apparent mind identifying as physical form. That's quite a trick. So it's constant. And so each moment we could say a new identity, like I'm the one sitting here, and I'm the one talking, and I'm Byron Katie. And then you may think or believe that you are Lilou, and you're sitting there, and all these identities. And then, as mind would have it, these images of past and future, we believe that's I, and that it really happened. And it's like, can you imagine a planet where peopled by human beings that believe the images in their head are real when it's just a movie? And that ego is very powerful. But at the same time, a terrified child, afraid of being nothing and what would happen to its life, like the fear of death, the fear of life, the same. This is, I'm finding myself saying a lot and apologize if it seems a little too far out. But my family, how did they deal with it? Eventually very well. Love is very powerful.
It seems like from if we speak from a loving consciousness, from a loving place, we could say pretty much anything. And actually, even situations become quite funny. When we see your workshops, people laugh a lot. I mean, those thoughts become quite hilarious.
Yes.
Do you crack up during the day like that?
Well, I do. I do. I was interviewed yesterday by a lovely woman that that actually said what you're saying. It's like, is it always so funny? But once you understand that it's all a state of mind, it does really become hilarious because there's nothing terrible going on. There never has been. There never will be. It's simply a state of mind that one is experiencing in the moment that is confusing them on, false identification.
Could we say that that's what it is to be a spiritual being having a human experience? Do you feel like a spiritual person? Do you think that's what it is to really set free the soul, the spirit, to express itself beyond these limitations that we experience sometimes?
Well, I can't exactly track where you're coming from, but every human being is simply pure imagination. And so, and I don't know your definition of spiritual, but for me, I would see that simply as peace, authentic peace. Peace that is beyond the ego's comprehension. And a little confusing for the ego at first, but eventually the ego prefers it because it has discovered its true identity and all the fear is gone, and it absolutely can dance.
How do we know that we're taking truly the right actions in life, or that we're truly
there's no argument in your head.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you determine that going to the left is the right way to go, the worst that can happen is what you're thinking and believing. If you choose to turn to the right, the worst that can happen is what you're thinking and believing. And if you do nothing, the worst that can happen is what you're thinking and believing. And all the while, we're on the perfect path. There are no wrong paths.
So you're saying really reality is like this movie we're in, that we're living and that we're creating, and we're having the events, the people, the everything right there as we project it, as we
in the
think
moment.
from the inside.
Yes, in the moment. In the moment, the images and the thoughts we're believing about the images and the way we define what we see. It's all happening in the moment. And in the moment, those images of past and future, and believing that we are that image, that we have been, that we're going to be, it can be terrifying. And if you're witnessing out of a clear mind, it can be incredibly loving and dear and enlightening.
I remember interviewing Ram Dass that was saying, about loving awareness, and it's so thick. He's like, Lilou, this is so thick. Love is so thick. I love it when he spoke of loving awareness.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
He had another birthday just recently. He's in his early 80s, but his 80s, and just what a dear.
This grace, I could feel it through him, and he's really good, like you, at describing something. We can feel it, and we want to live there permanently. You have somewhat that chance or that happening that it seems permanent with you. I guess that some people experiencing the work have it on and off, and it's a continuous exercise. So how does that match with your experience?
The work is it's a practice. And that people sit in. And, when you, for example, if you had the thought, he doesn't care about me, and you just sit in those 4 questions and meditate on the question, is it true? He doesn't care about me. Is it true? Can I really know that it's true he doesn't care about me? And just to sit in that and notice how you react when you believe that thought, and the stress that takes over, and the images that appear, and your reaction out of those, and then just sit in, who would you be without that thought? He doesn't care about you. And just contemplate that in the same situation. Who would you be without the thought? And then to experience the opposite, he does care about me, and to see in that situation and moment what you may have missed. It could be that person is actually being very caring toward you, and because of what you were thinking and believing, you missed it. You overlooked it. You were not on the same page. And so it's a practice just to sit in that. And as you know, I invite people who are stressed out to identify what they're thinking and believing, to write it down, and to question it. And each time people do that, they become more loving, caring, kinder human beings. And the world begins to shift. And the world is internal. As the mind shifts, the world shifts. So how can I love the world if I don't love my thoughts? The thoughts create the world. They're an illusion or a dream. So as the mind, as it continues to question itself, as the mind begins to literally love itself, fall into understanding, love itself, then the world that it continues to perceive, to project, is a beautiful world. And it is the opposite of denial. It's where it is really seen out of its authentic self. And we're left with, as I recall, it was Einstein that we gave credit to for saying, the most important question is the universe friendly? And so that's really what I'm inviting the world to. It's a friendly universe. Don't believe me. Discover it for yourself. And if I see the world as a frightening place, then I look to this. I don't try to change the world. I look to this. And until I can see that it's a friendly universe, my work's not done. So that's the challenge I offer to everyone interested in such ideas.
That's why we're happy to have you in Europe, because there's quite so much to do here.
I am so looking forward to that 9-day school that I do there in Germany, and I'm so looking forward to coming to France and my other stops in Norway and Amsterdam and London and Stockholm and Oslo. It's here in front of me in Paris and Bern and Cologne, and then I end the tour with that 9-day school in Bad Neuenahr.
When we're not possessed by a vision, but when we're carried by such an inspiring and empowering idea and wish, for this planet to transform, I guess you find all your energy in it, because you're in your 70s now, right?
Yes.
Early 70s,
yes.
And you're more radiant than ever, and you're going on this month's tour in Europe. I mean, what is this drive, this energy coming from?
It's like cause and effect, where there's an invitation, then it's like a magnet. It's just another way for the self to meet the self. What wouldn't I say yes to if it were possible? And I know one of my invitations is to Nairobi, and I can say yes to that and do an entire event just as you and I are, I don't have to travel to all of these. I can travel the way you and I are traveling right now. So in this age, it's a beautiful thing when everything is virtual, just like the mind. I watch my grandchildren on the video games, and they're in a virtual world, and the world really is just like that in our heads. So it's as though I'm witnessing the apparent human race leaving the material world and going completely into the virtual, which is closer to reality than this physical apparent world that we have dreamed up.
Yet it feels so good more than ever to meet in person. Like we have this urge to, I feel, to come together in physical form as well. That's very, like we have this urge for eating healthy, this need, it feels like it's coming finally from the inside instead of being bombarded from messages outside or hearing that, that's where the switch is. Could that be the switch happening from inside out?
Yes, it's as the mind clears, the things you describe become so clear. Like maybe it's like in my own experience, it's like I did the work and smoking quit me. I did the work and drugs became just not necessity. I did the work and poor health left me. And even on my deathbed, I would be in the perfect health for me. And I have, and everyone is really speaking from their deathbed if they're speaking from a false reality. But yes, sweetheart, yes, it's the clearer we get, the kinder our life becomes, and until you no longer need false reality.
Yeah.
It's. Yeah, I think as simple as I can say it, it's like, let's say that this is difficult. Let's say there was someone I didn't like. I look to me. That's on me, and feel what it feels like when you don't like someone. That is on me. So I would do a worksheet, a Judge-Your-Neighbor worksheet, meditate on what I was thinking and believing in that moment, and then question it. And then when I see that person, I'm completely connected. No matter what they say or do, I'm connected. So now, that was not running into that person was not fun. Now, running into that person is fun. Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't want to run into her again. I do want to run into her again. Mm-hmm. And until we see every human being through that kind of clarity, then our work's not done. We know that when we're fearful, we're in a disconnect. And when our mind is clear, then we're connected to everyone and everything, including this. Who cares if it's real or not? I'm connected. There's nothing, imagined or not, that isn't welcome in my world, in a clear-minded world.
Katie, Byron, Katie, I always want to call you Katie, but no, it's Byron.
Well, you can call me Katie, that's fine.
I love it because Guy Henrik's, his wife is Katie, and I just connect. You have similar energy to her. too. Katie Hendricks. Anyway, but in a spiritual conversation, some people say, oh, once you're enlightened or arrive at a certain stage, then there's no reason to be on Earth. Is that something that you would
Well,
agree with?
I would say there's no way to be on Earth. It's not possible.
Tell us more about that one.
Well, on Earth, as are all things, is simply imagination, pure imagination, and that's a very limited experience to like any other symbol. I mean, what would stop you? You know, it's like this is Earth. You know, it's like my name. If you can call me Byron Katie, and my birth certificate's Byron Kathleen. So you say, you know, what is your name? And I would say Byron Kathleen, and no one asks me if I believe it or not, or if it's true for me. So it's like I'll say Byron Kathleen, but just don't ask me if it's true. You know, a birth certificate doesn't make something true. You know, if a person just really set in who am I, it's quite a different experience.
So then how do you make choices? How do you say yes? Earlier on you said yes, that felt right to go to Nairobi, to Europe. How do you say those yeses? Where do you come from then?
Well, you know, my first thought is why not? Why not? And there's nothing to stop me, absolutely nothing. And then I hear things, or I could say in this discussion, I imagine things that are much more resourceful. And then who knows, that will happen or not. Like this interview, I say yes, and I really look forward to it because I've heard about how sweet you are. And I really look forward to it, and I say yes, and I never know if it's going to happen or not. It's really none of my business. My business is just to love what is, and here we are, and it's kind of magical without a future. Just, you know.
Mm-hmm. And yet we can't be available and be there for everyone. And there's maybe a misconceptions on saying no's. You know, it seems like we can say no from a loving place, and there is some things where we truly are needed now in some places. And so this is part of the work too, right? Clearing all those things up, so we can truly come from an authentic place. Can we say that?
It's like I did the work and smoking quit me, and I didn't know that would happen. So as we do the work, in other words, as we question what we're believing, then those things just fall into place. They just fall into place, and you know. There's an experience of like this is it, you know, this moment now. And any plan that I think happened, you know, I can talk about it, but it's like my name, you know. It's just this is it right here, right now. No past, no future.
Mm-hmm. I love what you said. I think it was with Oprah when she interviewed you on the Soul series.
Mm-hmm.
No one can hurt me. This is my job.
Yeah, no one can hurt me. That's my job. Yeah.
Because a lot of us are so harmful against ourselves, isn't it true? We can be so. Like, I remember Oprah mentioning in some of her interviews how most of the people she would interview, one of the common things is that the people thought they were not good enough, not worth it, not. So there's this deep suffering, but we come on Earth being full and complete, don't we? And then things happen.
Well,
or this is embedded.
We at some point believe we exist, and that is the first movement away from reality. In other words, identity is born, and the moment we believe in anything, that's the first separation, and it's, inquiry can really take care of that, especially for people who have had experience in meditation and being still. This work as meditation is very powerful, rather than just being in the moment to welcome the thoughts and images and write down what we're thinking and believing and to question it. It's quite a powerful process.
Can you tell us how it evolved, or how you evolved with this technology, if we can say, or this how? Did that progress over the years, the past 25 years or so?
Well, not long ago, I was looking at the little book that it goes free all over the world, and it's on thework.com, and it's just a really the work in a nutshell. And I think it's in 34 languages at thework.com for anyone interested in specifically how to do the work. But I was looking at it, and all these years, it's just been consistent. It used to be 3 questions, and it was, is it true? Can you really know that it's true? That was the first question. And then I separated them. Is it true? Can you really know that it's true? Can you absolutely know that it's true? So it went from 3 to 4 questions, but the content hasn't changed, other than the world absolutely, which for some people is very helpful.
Is there some other things or books or teachings, or you mentioned meditation earlier on, that is complementary to the work, that can be associated with and really works well?
Everything. Yoga, everything. It doesn't matter what a person's religion is. This is just about people. So many people, just people in trouble, just understanding that what we're thinking and believing in the moment creates our world. And so it doesn't matter what our backgrounds are, or what our spiritual practice is, or our daily practice is. It just doesn't matter. This, to question one's mind just supports the practice we're in. For example, 12-step programs. It's, the work is like all 12 steps, and just, it's just so, and A Course in Miracles, and Science of Mind, and we have very religious people that are come to the 9-day school for the work, and we have people that are so religious that they bring all of their ways of worshiping, with them into the school, and we make great allowances for those. This is not to take away anything beautiful. This is just to question one's mind in the name of peace.
I remember doing the work on God. Oh my God, that was a big one. Yeah. Just working on that shakes you up and frees you up too.
It really does. It takes a lot of courage to judge God, and on that worksheet, on that Judge-Your-Neighbor, Judge-Your-God worksheet. But oh my goodness, the freedom to connect with that source that you experience as God, you become closer, not more distant. But it does seem like such sacrilege to dare to judge God on paper and to even consider it internally. But it's one of the it's a very powerful experience, and as you know from experience.
So how do we get from those 4 questions to a 9-day program? How come it's so long? Because really, I mean, those questions are pretty direct and amazing results happen right there. So why is it 9 days?
Well, no one needs to come to the school to have to set themselves free. It's just something I offer. It's an invitation, and it's where people come to just sit in this. I have like capsules, one for fear and tear, and one for the physical body, and one for prejudice, and we have a communication capsule. And we have a capsule that's amazing on relationships. And we have a most ashamed capsule. And it's quite a school. We just take people and on God. And we take people through every possible source of problematic consideration in their life, everywhere that they are suffering. And we try to cover it all in 9 days. But the first school was 28 days. So then people said, we just can't do that. Please, shorten it. So then I think I went to 23, and then eventually 14, and then I went to 9, and it seems that most people that are serious about their practice and can take that much time out of their life, and it works for them. It's not too much. It's not too little, and it's so extremely powerful just to sit in yourself for 9 days through this.
It could be pretty daunting. No,
It's nothing short of radical. It's people go home and their family members often just do not recognize them. It's that radical, and they're very grateful. I get a lot of thank you notes.
Can we say that sometimes we feel like a great balance in our life, in the work life or in the love life, but is it much better? I'm sure it's much better, but when finding this equilibrium in all areas, in all, is that really what we're supposed to do? I mean, is it really the work? We're supposed to work on all areas. You know what I mean? Like it seems like we're happy in one area, but true happiness needs to be balanced in all.
Well, if you look at the areas, sooner or later you do have a problem in those areas. So I've just condensed it all down to that's about it. So when people leave the school, they really have a head start for their practice. And then I have a continuing school for the work through the Institute for the Work, where we continue, and everyone's invited, and it's a kind of aftercare, and it's something I put together so people can sit in the work as a daily practice and as a community that is meditating on those questions or in those questions.
Well, Byron, Katie, thank you so much for your joy, you're radiant, you're beautiful. It was a delicious interview, and I look forward to spreading this message all across the internet and having you in Europe, and that all Europeans come and gather in what you put together. Thank you so much for coming in July 2014 to Europe, and for you beautiful co-creators watching this show. If you want to see more, there is the work. Is thework.com, right?
Thework.com.
Thank you.
thework.com. Thank you, Lilou.
Lilou.
Lilou, it was very sweet being with you.
Thank you. Much love.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Kat. Excellent. Thank you.
Well, that was a very odd interview. That was a very odd interview. I rarely run off like that, but you are very, very dear to be with, Lilou.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you had. I could feel your. I didn't know. It's. Oh, I usually interview in person, so I'm not used anymore to Skype, and I try to always get in my interviewee's a world, but yours is so. Woo, it's so big and so huge that it's. I was actually quite spiraling at first at the
Yeah.
beginning of the interview, and the energy took quite some time to land
Yeah.
to come. But it was really beautiful. I look forward to doing this in person one day, maybe when you're in Europe, because this will truly be a blessing. But thank you for being you. I mean, you're different.
You're welcome, Lilou. Thank you for being you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.